I'm going to make this perfectly clear up front. I'm not trying to start a trend with the sunglasses in the thumbnails. I'm just wearing these glasses because they are thematically appropriate to the movie we're talking about this week. And before anyone brings it up, I know you can see the reflection of my setup in the glasses. I don't care. Good? We're good? Good. Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to Underground Cinema. I'm your underground conductor. This week, we'll be talking about Wristcutters, a love story. Content warning, this film deals with a very sensitive subject matter. If you find that matter disturbing in any way, probably shouldn't watch this. Just putting that out there up front. I'll be honest, I did not know about this movie before a week ago. Typically, when I do reviews like this, it's based on a movie I've seen or a movie I've heard of because I have a lot of knowledge of obscure films. But I discovered this film while I was looking for supernatural comedies that had to deal with this concept of death for no particular reason. Watching this film, I knew it would be a comedy going in, but I still expected it to have a sense of somberness to it. I expected to have a bit of a creep factor given the subject matter. I didn't experience that at all. The concept behind Wristcutters is that you have a character named Zia who's sort of distraught after this terrible breakup that he's had, so he decides to end it all. He cuts his wrists. That's it. Done. Everything's over. Or so he thinks. He finds himself in this weird, bizarre purgatory that is reserved only for people who have committed suicide. And it's ironic because this purgatory is basically just like the real world, but just a little bit worse. A lot of the desert sequences were shot in the deserts of California, and I just love that aesthetic for an afterlife because it just shows how mundane the afterlife could be conceptually. It's sort of like The Medium Place in the show The Good Place. Or Highway to Hell, 1992. All the hell sequences were just shot in Arizona. It's oh, we don't need to waste money on computer rendering. We can just go to Arizona. In any case, Zia arrives in hell, gets a job, starts going about his business, then he runs into a friend of his named Brian, who's played by Gary Busey. And from Brian, he finds out his ex-girlfriend, Desiree, who he killed himself over, also killed herself. So he goes on this journey with his best friend, Eugene, to find her. It's basically just another road trip movie where a guy who is hung up on this ex-girlfriend of his goes on this road trip to reunite with her, only to realize that there's a perfectly good girl that's been in his blind spot the whole time that he's just been ignoring until the third act. It is the movie Road Trip. It's the movie Cherry 2000. It's the movie Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, which I know technically isn't a road trip movie, but it's conceptually the same and takes place in a car, so I'm counting it anyway because it's my video. But in any case, the film is about a road trip that Zia and Eugene go on, and while they're on this road trip, they pick up a hitchhiker, a new suicide in quotes, named McCall. McCall is on a journey similar to Zia, only while Zia is searching for his ex-girlfriend, McCall is searching for the people in charge. She's convinced that she's there by mistake because she did not technically kill herself, she OD'd. So her journey adds a layer of intrigue to the narrative, because it makes you question, okay, what is this bland afterlife? Are there people overlooking it? Are there people in charge? Or is it just a bunch of randos who are just meant to be miserable? It's an interesting foil to everything that you see. This movie also deals with a lot of deeper concepts regarding the afterlife, which is what I really love in a movie like this. I love the sort of mythological aspects. There's a lot of cute aspects of world building in this movie, not just the fact that the afterlife looks just like a shittier version of the real world. There is also some mystical elements to this film, because it is an afterlife setting. When they're going on the road trip, under the passenger seat of Eugene's car is literally a black hole for some reason. They go to a camp in the movie where you can just perform miracles willy-nilly and no one treats it like it's any big deal. Apparently, whatever you have on you, when you die, you take with you to the afterlife, which is kind of an interesting concept because typically there's a common saying that once you're gone, you can't take your material possessions with you. That's a common concept. And this movie is all no, you can take things with you, but just what's on you. And another aspect of the world that I find interesting is that no one in this afterlife can smile. That was mentioned at a certain point in the movie, and I didn't think about it, but then I thought back through the film up to that point, and then I paid attention to the end of the film. And it's true. No one in this version of the afterlife smiles, because why would you? You killed yourself, and now you're basically trapped in like a slightly worse version of the world you were trying to escape from. It's just an extra dose of irony sprinkled on. You know, you just have little things like that I really enjoy. There's also like little verbal details. Like in the film, when anyone refers to the act of killing themselves, they say, oh, how did you off yourself? Or this is how I offed myself. It's very distinct. I really enjoy little details like that, especially since I just finished binging Chaos on Netflix, and they did not pay attention to like the verbal implications in that show at all. Like how all the characters keep on saying, oh my god, instead of oh my gods, despite the fact that it's a polytheistic world. This movie also has a lot of like surprise appearances that you wouldn't expect. Mark Boone is in this movie. He plays a character named Mike, who's a mechanic. Nick Offerman is in this movie. He plays a policeman who blew his own brains out. Will Arnett is in this movie. He plays a messiah type character who like runs an afterlife cult, and he's like trying to perform like this big spectacle, which by the way, it is my headcanon that Will Arnett in this movie is just Job Bluth, who killed himself because his magic career didn't work out, and now he's in the afterlife and he's trying to do more tricks for people. It makes perfect sense when you think about it. Like seriously, Wristcutters came out at around the same time Arrested Development was cancelled. It lines up too well. The character of Eugene is also interesting, not just as a comic relief character, but also based on what he represents. Eugene, as a character, is a failed musician who committed suicide, which, fun trivia, apparently he was based on a real musician named Eugene Hutz, who's the lead singer of a band called the Gogol Bordello. You hear a lot of their songs in this movie, and it's quite a fun reference. It's sort of like how Johnny Depp based his performance of Captain Jack Sparrow off of Keith Richards. But Eugene's character, we're introduced to him early on in the film, and apparently in the afterlife he lives with his parents and brother, and this is sort of like a wild thing to Zia, because Zia has never heard of a whole family being in this suicide afterlife before. That means every single member of the family killed themselves, and that is true. We find that out in the film. But learning that in this movie, raises an interesting thematic point in how this film is basically about togetherness, or the lack thereof. It's a very interesting perspective because in our society we highly discourage suicide because it's thought of as a selfish act. If you kill yourself, then you're basically leaving behind all your loved ones. They're never going to see you again. But now, trapped in this bland afterlife in this film, people who are here are never going to see their loved ones again. It's sort of a piece of irony that you don't really consider from the opposite perspective, and I don't know if it was intentional, but this movie shined a light on that. That is why Zia is actually so excited when he hears that his girlfriend Desiree also killed herself, because that means that there's someone from his old life who's there that he can reunite with. Not only someone, but the someone that he killed himself over. It's interesting showing drive from such a man who fell into a state of hopelessness, because essentially he killed himself because he lost purpose and meaning in life, but now he's found new meaning in the afterlife that's driving him. And it seems so futile, but it's the only thing he has. As they're going on this journey, Zia, Eugene, and McCall come across a character named Neller, who's actually played by another musician named Tom Waits. Neller takes them to basically his commune, a sort of camp, and this is the camp that you can perform miracles in, just like that. As the film continues, Zia and McCall hook up, because of course they do. This is a road trip romance movie. And then the next day they go to this compound, which is where Will Arnett's character is. And that is where Zia reunites with Desiree. It creates a bit of awkwardness because McCall's right there. They hooked up the night previous. Then Desiree apologizes to Zia for the way that she made him feel. And it's very clear that she's gotten caught up in all this cult stuff. She's not mentally well, because of course she's not. She killed herself. No one here is mentally well, but she is not the way Zia remembers her, and also Zia has all these conflicting feelings about McCall now. In any case, Job Bluth, performs his little magic trick, and that's when the people in charge show up. The people that McCall has been looking for the whole movie. They show up to end this spectacle. They take Job Bluth, they take Desiree, and McCall catches up with one of them and has a conversation with them. Zia waits up for her to come back. Eugene tells him, look, apparently Neller was undercover people in charge, and McCall talked to one of them, and they cleared up her mistake. They're sending her back to life. So now Zia is alone. He's got to head back to his shitty town with his shitty roommate, working at his shitty job at Kamikaze Pizza. But then something happens. He drops something in the car and falls down the black hole that's under the seat. And in that moment, he gets a second chance. He wakes up, he finds himself in a hospital bed, and he looks next to him, and it's McCall in the same hospital room recovering from her OD. They share a look with each other, as it's very obvious that they recognize each other. They smile at each other, which is of course thematically relevant because they couldn't smile in the afterlife, and the film just ends. Now, I really enjoy this movie. I think it's a wonderfully executed story. I think it does a lot with its limited budget because the film only cost $1 million to make. Like I said, I find it hilarious that this purgatory is just a shittier version of real life, but I think the ending could be better. Like, the way the film was building up, because of all of Zia's, like, self-loathing and doubt, it really felt like after McCall left, he was just going to go back to his life as it was. It felt like it was leaning into a tragedy, that he was just never going to escape his existence. And I think that would be a better ending, frankly, because I think it'd be so impactful to show this character who's gotten over his previous relationship and found something objectively better, but it's just too late. I think thematically it would have worked better with the story. Him coming back to life, it's nice. I do like that that's the ending because it isn't a punch in the gut. But with this kind of story, it feels like it was building to a tragedy, and it doesn't really feel like this happy ending was what was appropriate for this film. The ending that we have also raises some questions about the world that's set up in this film. It's not a perfect setup, but most of the things in this movie were nice and neat in terms of world building. But bringing Zia back to life doesn't really track with the continuity that's established in this film, if that makes sense. Like with McCall, we never meet any characters that she knows in this afterlife. But with Zia, we do. With Zia, he knows the character Brian, and he finds his girlfriend Desiree, and we find out in the movie that both Brian and Desiree committed suicide partially as a response to Zia committing suicide. So now that Zia's suicide has been reversed, what does that mean? Like, is this a new timeline that he's living in? Do Desiree and Brian's suicides still count? Would they have killed themselves anyway? Since he's alive, does that mean they'll be alive? Because it's very explicit with Desiree. Like, she killed herself a month after Zia did. You know, it just raises some questions that I feel like the movie wasn't prepared to answer. And to be fair, I am glad that the film just kind of ended with them in the hospital beds, not saying a word. I think that was a touching ending, but I feel like it does raise questions, and I feel like it could have lent itself to a better ending. In any case, I really enjoyed Wristcutters: A Love Story. Like, this isn't my favorite movie about suicide. That would be Archie's Final Project from 2009. But it works. It's one of the best indie films I think I've seen in the past few years. I think it works thematically. I think it balances the emotional beats in just the right ways. The comedy in this film feels appropriate to the world that we're living in. It's all very situational and based in either banter or event. And the acting is pretty good too. Overall, this is a film I'd recommend. Like I said, just be aware of the subject matter in it. But yeah, that was this week's episode of Underground Cinema. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to subscribe if you're feeling generous. You can follow me on Instagram or Letterboxd if you want to hear more of my film takes. And I will see you later. You know, it's a funny thing with these glasses. This is one of my favorite pairs of glasses, and they're actually broken. Like, I didn't just break them, they've already been broken. I just propped them on my face for the whole video. I tried to get the screw right here replaced today, but, like, none of the glasses places I went to had the right screw, so, I mean, at least I can still wear them, technically. It's funny. It's funny.